Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum dear students. I hope you will be fine and you will be doing well. आज हम अपना सेकंड टॉपिक शुरू करने जा रहे हैं और दैट इज़ रीडिंग. Reading is a method of communication that enables a person to turn writing into meaning. It allows the reader to convert written text into a meaningful language with independence, comprehension, and fluency, and to interact with the message. Reading is a great habit that can change human life significantly. It can entertain us, amuse us, and enrich us with knowledge and experiences narrated. There exist some reading techniques, styles, ways, methods which, if mastered at a growing stage, can help us be better and far more comprehensive readers. These skills, styles, techniques, ways, methods, types, kinds might not necessarily be learned as rigid theories or rules, but if understood well, once they can definitely enhance the reading skills and increase the quality and quantity of output that we get from our reading. There are two main rules. Rule number one of the primary rules for reading anything is to spot the most important words the author uses. Spotting them is not enough. However, you have to know how they are being used. Finding an important word merely begins the more difficult research for meanings. One or more common or special with the word which the word is used to convey as it appears here and there in the text. There is another rule number 2. Another important rule of reading, as you have seen, is to pick out and interpret the important words in a book. There is another and closely related rule to discover the important sentences and to understand what they mean. आसान अल्फाज में बेटा मैं आपको ये बताना चाहता हूँ कि रीडिंग जो है एक्चुअली इट इज़ अ हैबिट, इट इज़ अ टेक्निक ऑफ अंडरस्टैंडिंग द मैसेज दैट इज़ कन्वेड बाय द राइटर और द ऑथर. There are two ways to understand that message that is conveyed by the author. There are two rules. One, to spot the difficult words in a text, and the other rule is to spot the difficult phrases, clauses, and sentences, and then to interpret those difficult words and phrases, clauses, and sentences in order to understand them well. Similarly, इसके अलावा हमारे पास there are two kinds of main reading. One, reading for information, and second, reading for understanding. Now, the difference or the distinction between reading for information and reading for understanding must be made very much clear. We must consider the difference in what you get out of these two kinds of reading. Both information and understanding are knowledge in some sense. Getting more information is learning, and so is coming to understanding what you did not understand before. What is the difference then? To be informed is to know simply that something is the case. To be enlightened is to know in addition what it is all about, why it is the case, what its connection are with other facts, in what respects it is the same and different, and so forth. In simple words, it can be said that most of us are acquainted with this distinction in terms of the difference between being able to remember something or being able to explain it. If you remember only something after reading, it means you have read that piece of writing only for the sake of information. But if you can explain it well after reading that text, it means you have gained something. You have read that thing for understanding. You have read it for understanding, for a comprehension. That is why you are able to explain it. So you have to keep in mind that these two differences are based on the results or the ends that are being set for these two types of readings. Reading for information means when you read only for gaining something, for remembering something, for memorizing something, for pleasure. When you read a newspaper or a magazine, that is a reading for information. But if you read for understanding, it means you have to pay attention to things, to technical terms, to the interpretation of the message, to understanding of the message that is conveyed by the author. So that you, after reading that thing, when you read for understanding, you must be able to explain it after reading that text. If you remember what an author says, you have learned something from reading him. If what he says is true, you have even learned something about the world. But whether it is a fact about the book or the world, you have gained nothing but information. If you have exercised only your memory, you have not been enlightened. That happens only when, in addition to knowing what an author says, you know what he means and why he says it. Furthermore, when we read for information, we require facts. When we read to understand, we learn not only facts but their significance. Each kind of reading has its virtue, but it must be used in the right place. If a writer does not understand more than we do, or if in particular passage he makes no effort to explain, we can only be informed by him and not enlightened. But if an author has insights we do not possess, and if in addition he has tried to convey them in what he has written, we are neglecting his gift to us if we do not read him differently from the way in which we read newspapers or magazines. Moreover, there are three distinctive ways of reading, which are: number one, structural or analytical; interpretative or synthetic reading; critical or evaluative reading. The first reading can be called structural or analytic. Here the reader proceeds from the whole to its parts. जब आप होल से पार्ट्स की तरफ आते हैं, जब आप ओवरऑल एक टेक्स्ट को रीड करते हैं, उसको इंटरप्रेट करते हैं, फिर उसके अलग अलग पार्ट्स की तरफ आते हैं, सो दिस काइंड ऑफ रीडिंग इज नोन एज structural or analytic reading. The second reading is called interpretive or synthetic reading. Here the reader proceeds from the parts to the whole. ये बिल्कुल उसका ऑपोजिट है. आप इस पे क्या करते हैं, पार्ट्स को एक्सप्लेन करते हैं, पार्ट्स से जाके आप जाते हैं एज ए होल एक वर्क को डिस्कस करते हैं. मैं आपको एक आसान मिसाल दूँ. आप जो है एक नावल को रीड करते हैं, पहले आप पूरे नावल के बारे में या किसी ड्रामे या स्टोरी के बारे में एक मैसेज को अंडरस्टैंड करते हैं कि ये पूरा ड्रामा किस पैगाम के बारे में लिखा गया है, किस टॉपिक के बारे में लिखा गया है. फिर आप उसके मुख्तलिफ सीन्स और मुख्तलिफ जो है कैरेक्टर्स को डिस्कस करते हैं. ये जो है क्या है, इट इज़ नोन एज द स्ट्रक्चर और एनालिटिक वे ऑफ रीडिंग. सेकंड जो है ये बिल्कुल उसका ऑपोजिट है. इसमें आप क्या करते हैं, सीन्स और कैरेक्टर्स और मुख्तलिफ पार्ट्स को डिस्कस करते हैं और फिर आखिर में आप नावल या ड्रामा के ओवरऑल थीम या ओवरऑल मैसेज या टॉपिक को डिस्कस करते हैं. दिस काइंड ऑफ द सेकंड वे ऑफ रीडिंग इज नोन एज इंटरप्रेटिव और सिंथेटिक रीडिंग. द थर्ड रीडिंग is called critical or evaluative way of reading. Here the reader judges the author and decides whether he agrees or disagrees with the author. It is also very important to highlight the difference or the distinction between intrinsic and extrinsic reading here. By intrinsic reading, I mean reading a book in itself, quite apart from all other books. By extrinsic reading, I mean reading a book in the light of other books. The other books may be, in some cases, be only reference books such as dictionaries or encyclopedias or research books. They may be secondary books which are useful commentaries or digests. They may be other great books. आम अल्फाज में बेटा आप ये कह सकते हैं कि जब आप एक किताब को बग़ैर किसी दूसरी किताब के हेल्प के उस किताब को अंडरस्टैंड करने की कोशिश करते हैं, दिस काइंड ऑफ रीडिंग इज़ नोन एज इंट्रिंसिक रीडिंग. आप सिर्फ उस किताब पर फोकस करते हैं और उस किताब को समझने की कोशिश करते हैं. इस किस्म के रीडिंग को हम कहते हैं इंट्रिंसिक रीडिंग. एक्सट्रिंसिक रीडिंग जो है बेटा, इसमें हम क्या करते हैं कि एक किताब को समझने के लिए उसके रिलेटेड बहुत सी किताबों को हम पढ़ने की कोशिश करते हैं. मुख्तलिफ़ किस्म की लाइब्रेरीज़ में जाते हैं, इंसाइक्लोपीडियाज़ को पढ़ते हैं, डिक्शनरीज़ को पढ़ते हैं, रिसर्च थीसिस को पढ़ते हैं, रिसर्च पेपर्स को पढ़ते हैं, मुख्तलिफ़ किस्म की और तारीख़ और इसके अलावा बहुत सी जो है किताबों को पढ़ने की कोशिश करते हैं ताकि हम उस किताब को मुख्तलिफ एंगल से समझ सकें. सो दिस काइंड ऑफ रीडिंग फॉर विच यू रेफर टू अदर बुक्स इन ऑर्डर टू अंडरस्टैंड अ सिंगल बुक is known as extrinsic reading technique. In addition to all this, there are several styles or techniques of reading used in different situations which are as follows. Number one, scanning as a technique or style of reading, skimming as a technique or style of reading, intensive reading as a technique or style of reading, extensive reading as a technique or style, speed reading as a technique or style. My next lecture will be focusing on these 5 techniques or styles of reading. अगले लेक्चर में बेटा मैं आपको तफसील के साथ इन 5 टाइप्स ऑफ टेक्निक्स को डिस्कस करूँगा along with examples. इंशाल्लाह. Thank you so much.